Present and speak about the UAE with a stockholding point of view. Our first speaker is Mr. Asim Siddiqui. I've got a very brief, short and sweet introduction of him in front of me. He is the Managing Director and the owner of Asian Steel Group.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning, good afternoon. Pleasure to be here. I wanted to just introduce myself and the line of business that we're in, so you could probably better understand the perspective from which I'm coming from. I'm the managing director of Age Group, where basically Asian Trade in Dubai and Aid Steel in Jebel Ali Free Zone. We're structural steel stockholders. We have been established since 1979, and we have also expanded into coil cutting services and galvanizing, and also structural steel stockholding in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. So this is the perspective I'm going to be talking to you about in the next 10-15 minutes. If I can move on. The session, as it was introduced regarding construction, fabrication, development projects, stance of our customers, these are the topics which I'm going to be briefly covering in my presentation. I'll go through them one by one and as quickly and as painlessly as possible for you guys. But let me start with the first topic that I'm going to talk about, and that's regarding fabrication, construction, stockholding. How can your customers' needs be met in an increasingly competitive industry? Naturally, we're stockholders. We're very much engaged with the end users. I think the number one matter that we need to be is flexible. We have to be totally flexible when we come to supplying the needs or the quantity, the quality in the shortest possible time at the right product and the right price. We can get orders from our customers and have to deliver within 24, 48 hours. That's the kind of market that we're entering into now, where pre-2008, we were in a period where there was so much demand, so much activity that you could more or less even dictate a minimum quantity that you would be willing to supply. That's all changed. So it's being flexible to your customers' needs. It's very important in today's competitive market for you to be actually competing. Variety, of course, our customers generally want to try and buy from one source. They don't want the hassle of going to multiple sources. So we need to make sure that we have in hand a wide variety of steel, which covers the entire range, that the customer can source from one location. Of course, quality control management has become one of more and more important in the industry. QC departments, they want mill test certificates to be supplied along with the steel as and when it's being delivered. So there's a whole logistical and bureaucratic process that needs to be followed to ensure that quality control is taken care of. In our line of business, we, aside from commodity price risk being our major risk, we have to take calculated credit risks on our customers. I mean, we are managing cash flow and financing for our customers by extending quite long periods of credit. And that these decisions have to be taken according to the needs of our customers, and of course calculated, very, very carefully. And of course, after-sales support is key in our line of business. Without that, one could not expect to get repeat business, which is absolutely important in these times of competitive environments. If I can go to the next topic where it says preferred places to secure particular product. Now this is changing as stockholders. Traditionally, like I said, we're in structural steel. We were buying flats and supplying flats. Customers' preferences were from Ukraine, Japan, and South Korea. Long items, South Korea, Japan, and Europe. Rebars, angles, and Turkey, and so on. But now, local manufacturers are playing a bigger role and a big part in the supply of the material in this particular region. Their material is being accepted very, very well, and I believe that that's going to change rapidly as we move forward for various other reasons, which I'm going to cover a bit later, what the advantages of what the local manufacturers bring. One of them, of course, is the shorter lead times. Our manufacturers, when we import steel, you could say the steel doesn't arrive to our yards before 90 to 120 days. When we import from when we purchase from our local manufacturers, the steel is pretty much in our yards within 45 to 50 days. So it's a much, much shorter lead time for us. Of course, the pricing is a lot better. The mills need to get their pricing very, very competitive. We discussed in the earlier presentations the threat coming from China and other places around the world where products are being offered at a very, very low rate. And of course, in our case, on-time deliveries is something which is very, very important in our line of business, and we expect the same from the mills. So the mill needs to make sure that it delivers the material to us in time so we can take care of our customers in that time. Supplier finance, again, this is another thing mills could do to enter into the business of others. They could provide finance, which would help for them to make an entry into the market, as we're providing finance for a lot of our customers. Okay, stable prices. I think at the end of the day, this is a very difficult situation we're entering into in terms of the steel industry. I think it's very important that supply is balanced with demand rather than always constantly pushing for volumes. Our interaction with mills predominantly in the past has been push volume, regardless of where prices are moving. Everybody's got targets and whatnot, but I think we need to be moving towards a more responsible market, and in some cases we are, with the consolidation that's been taking place between ArcelorMittal, Tata Chorus. There's been more emphasis on matching supply with demand, although the steel industry has been in overcapacity mode more than less time. Being transparent, of course, is important. Between us and the mills, we feel that transparency is very, very important, and honesty. Developing close relationships built on trust. This is, again, a very important way to build business with each other. And of course, this is my favorite point, support with compensation when possible. At the end of the day, the risk that we're taking as stockholders, as the end user, is tremendous in terms of lead times, and the price fluctuations do impact us substantially. And of course, we mentioned in the last presentation that hedging solutions will probably, the trend will continue to increase in the near future due to the volatility of raw materials. So I think perhaps hedging solutions could also be helpful in controlling damage to profit and controlling exposure. Okay, competition from importers to the region. What will be the future impact on product pricing? Well, when it comes to local producers, which is what we have, ESI, our friends at ESI have started supplying us with heavy sections since June, July of this year. they have advantages over importers in terms of cheaper energy and transport costs, no import duties. And the main advantage, I think, which needs to be emphasized here is the shorter lead time. This substantially reduces the risk for us and our consumers, end users, in terms of the exposure on the volatile movement of price of steel. Importers, on the other hand, are still offering a much wider range and variety of steel, have a proven track record, and have good quality, which is already established in the market. But we expect that, as time moves on with the projects which are coming up in the GCC, that there will be imports which are landing here, and they are landing here. It's one of the challenges we face as a stockholder from China and other places of the world at almost silly offers, which we are receiving, and we have to contend with. And local manufacturers will also need to contend with that. So all of that means is basically product pricing is going to continue to remain highly volatile as we move forward between excessive oversupply and also in terms of the projects which are coming in this region, which I'm going to talk about briefly as I move on in the other slides. I mean, in short, I think the current steel prices are reflecting the status of the consumers. The prices are very, very reasonable at the moment, and we expect that these prices are attractive to stimulate announced construction projects, which, with high oil income revenue, it makes a lot more financial sense to start these projects sooner than later, based on the current prices of building materials, and particularly steel. However, having said that, liquidity still remains very, very tight in the market, and hopefully, it has to be managed very, very carefully moving on from here. Lead times. Can mill improve lead times and sell directly to consumers? Wow. Well, as a steel stockholder, that's probably the one question which I'm probably the most neutral person to answer. I think consumers require a lot more than just shorter lead times. I mean, the service that's provided, like from the likes of us, steel stockholders, is much more than just reduction of the short time. There's a financial aspect, the credit, extension of credit, the delivery, making sure the delivery is made to the customer on time. Sometimes the mills are struggling to deliver to us on time. Forget having to go directly to the customer and deliver. So there's a huge service added element there that I don't think the mills are quite equipped to handle. Going directly to consumers will mean the consumer needs to be booking a substantial quantity. So I expect that to be a limited impact for a lot of the mills, particularly if that's what they plan to do. And ultimately, we've seen, historically speaking, when order books of bills are low, lead times are lower, that has a self-destructive phase on steel prices. Steel prices tend to generally fall in such situations when there's more supply of steel available in the market. So I'm not quite sure if the reduction of lead times will, in the end, result in more increased margins for mills. But then again, I'm a stockholder, I would say that. Moving on, how the price fluctuation affects us. Well, typically, we're holding steel for 3 to 4 months in terms of sales volume in ready inventory. So that 3 to 4 months, we're totally exposed to how price is moving in the market. Before that, the lead times, I mean, when we place the order with our suppliers, can be anywhere between 3 to 4 months before that steel actually arrives at our warehouse. So the total exposure on steel price fluctuation for us can be from 6 to 8 months if we're importing. However, from local manufacturers, that considerably decreases down to 45 to 60 days. So effectively, could probably give us less exposure to price fluctuations, but nonetheless, quite considerable exposure is there at the end of the day. 6 months on average in our industry, we saw prices in June 2008 go from $1,400–1,500 a ton to about $500 to $600 a ton by December. So we can see that price can be very, very volatile and damaging for end users and stockholders like ourselves. Okay, the outlook on the construction market, you know, currently, what, 14 million tons of annual steel demand is in MENA. We expect, I mean, well, reports out there, you read any report out there, it's all predicting increases in demand over the next 5 years. In fact, there's another report I read that by 2020, the demand for steel in the MENA region could be around 70 million tons, based on double-digit growth, 8 to 9, 10% growth. So there is a lot of demand which is festering due to the announcements of mega projects from Saudi Arabia, particularly Saudi Arabia, Qatar, of course, preparing, and also now the UAE has entered the fray very recently. Dubai is back, as a lot of people have been saying. In terms of construction, I mean, I felt that this statistic was quite stark in terms of presenting the picture of what the scale of construction and the growth of construction by 2020, to assume that there'll be an increase of 80% from what it is today over the period of the next 8 years. So if I just go specifically, to give you an idea, we are experiencing very positive sentiments from our customers here in the UAE regarding some of the projects which have been announced. Some are new projects, and the general feeling from a lot of our customers is very upbeat and looking forward to these projects actually coming into fruition. Of course, World Expo 2020, that's a big question mark, but at the end of the day, if that happens, that would be a game changer for demand in the UAE, particularly moving forward in the next 7 to 8 years. Probably it could change a lot of the dynamics for steel demand and consumption moving forward. Of course, no discussion would be complete without discussing Qatar. Us stockholders here in the GCC were very excited about the Qatar, the FIFA World Cup preparation, the National Vision 2030. Qatar has basically committed about $70 billion of infrastructure spending, which it has to do before the FIFA World Cup. Although we haven't seen that translate yet as a stockholder, but we feel that the peak time requirement for raw materials will be between 2013 and 2017. So there'll be very good opportunities there. And we also feel that the UAE and Saudi companies will also benefit due to the huge demand. Otherwise, raw material prices in Qatar will be very, very high if they don't allow other companies to come in and support the growth. Moving on, Saudi, I mean, that's the story. For MENA, Saudi is the story at the end of the day. Booming economy, rapid growing population. KSA, I mean, this is a figure which struck me. $750 billion worth of construction projects in the pipeline, as per Citigroup. Now, if we estimate annual expenditure of contracts awarded, $60 to $70 billion a year, you could say the next 10 years is going to be very busy in Saudi. And just to let you know, in terms of when the last financial crisis occurred back in 2008, 2009, only about 4% of announced projects in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia were either delayed or cancelled. So it's a very small percentage. So it'll be interesting to see how things are going. Some of the projects which are there, King Abdullah Economic City, water electricity requirements for its population, $160 billion is some of the estimates. So the growth in Saudi is considered to be, it's supposed to be the market for us as steel traders, a very important market. We, incidentally, as a business, have ramped up our material management capabilities in Saudi. And as a result of Saudi, we're experiencing probably 30% increase in our volume turnovers this year, mainly coming from the Saudi market, and we expect that to continue. Of course, Iraq is also something which is coming over the horizon. Various segments of projects are being announced in Iraq, and that will also be a major contribution. for business and steel supply and other building materials. A lot of them will be routed through the UAE and other GCC countries. Having said all that, demand for particular steel products, well, like I've mentioned, we expect long products demand to increase from 15 million tons to 17 million tons by 2015, and flat products demand to increase from 3 million tons to 5.7 million tons by 2022. That's it, gentlemen. That's all. I just wanted to little brief you on our sort of experience and sentiment about the projects which are being announced. For us as steel stockholders, we consider this a very exciting time to be in this region, and we believe that the next 5 to 10 years will be a very busy period for the likes of us. Thank you. Basically, know your customer, do your checking, check with the market regularly. And I have to say right now, liquidity is tight. We have gone on the days of pre-2008. It's that much more difficult to recover your money, but the money is coming. It's one of those things. But the credit risk has to be managed very, very carefully in our line.
Well, Asim, the second question I would like to ask you is UAE has been known as a re-exporting hub in the region for many of the mills overseas. I would like to have your point of view and your thoughts on re-exporting to the neighbor countries, including finished long and flat, to neighbor countries such as Iraq, Iran, African countries, and possibly North African countries as well, Pakistan. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I mean, we know that the UAE in particular is a hub. It's a hub for all sorts of services, products, and whatnot. We've positioned ourselves as a business in Jebel Ali Free Zone. We have facilities there, and we're expanding on those facilities now because export has become such a crucial part of our business now. The local manufacturers for us, again, I'm telling you, we don't deal in rebar. We're not a rebar trader. And only lately have local producers started producing heavy sections, which are being re-exported to a certain degree. But yes, re-imports, imports which are coming in, and then we are exporting them to neighboring GCC countries, Saudi particularly, is one of the main destinations. The interesting point is, in 2008, us as a business was probably re-exporting 10–15% of our imported steel. Now the figure is much higher. It's around 45% of our overall turnover. So the market dynamics have changed dramatically since 2008 for obvious reasons. There's been a cooling down in the market here, and there's been heating up market in Saudi Arabia and the likes of Qatar. So yeah, I think in terms of re-exporting, this is a great location to be in. It's the first preferred point to be from the ease of cost of doing business from Jebel Ali Freeport, and moving the material between here and the other neighboring GCC is just by trailer. At the end of the day, it's not a difficult process, and it's now a major part of our business in today's day and age, and I think it's only going to increase as we move further along the line.
Mainly which countries or which destinations are playing more role in your imports? This is one issue. And second one is, what kind of the materials mainly you import to UAE or all the Middle East region, let's say that. Thank you.
Awesome.
I think you're asking about exports, right? What we're exporting.
No, I think he mentioned about the sources where you get steel from, correct?
Okay, if you're talking about sourcing of steel, that's changed dramatically for us. We're structural. We're predominantly dealing in plate, UBUC. These are our main items, angles, of course. Our previous sources have been Korea, Japan, and Ukraine for plate. Still are, to a great degree. And in terms of longs, again, Korea has been a big source for us. And But that has changed in the last 6 months, particularly. It's now we're going, I mean, for us, if I were to tell you as a percentage, the longs which we purchase, or should I say the heavy sections, is about 40% of our purchasing in a year. We expect that to go very much into the local producers' basket now. These were sections which were not available a year ago. They are now, for obvious reasons. The cost being cheaper, the lead time being much less. I think the lead time is probably more important than anything in this. So we're buying a lot now from Emirates Steel Industries. That's one of our key suppliers here in the UAE. But we're experiencing something similar in Saudi as well. We have operations in Saudi. One of our major purchases goes to Hadid for HR coil. If we compare the price between HR coil offered by Hadid and maybe imports coming from outside, we generally find that the fact that the material arrives at our yards sooner, delivered, no customs duty, absolutely to our warehouses, removes a lot of the logistical additional expenses and whatnot. So we're finding that there is a move towards local sourcing from local producers, whereas before there was a lot of importing for us from outside the GCC.